You may recognize this. It's the rainforest featured in Star Wars. There are more species of birds in this one shot than in the whole of North America. Birds like these rare scarlet macaws, rescued from poachers. The rainforest is under attack for timber, for cattle ranching, for farmland for the landless poor. Up to a fifth of some groups of wild animals and plants are threatened with extinction. The next 50 years could see a cataclysm on a par with the disappearance of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. And that includes life in the seas. Coastal habitats like coral reefs and mangrove swamps are under threat from pollution and from overfishing. The forests and the plankton in the oceans are vital sponges for absorbing the greenhouse gases from the world's factories, power stations, and motor vehicles. But the forests are being destroyed, while emissions of greenhouse gases are rising. There's hard scientific evidence for global warming and climate change. There is a detectable rise in sea levels and in extreme weather patterns. CFCs from refrigerators, aerosols, and air conditioners are destroying the ozone layer, the shield against the sun's deadliest ultraviolet rays. The ozone hole over Antarctica is as big as the United States. We're all too familiar with scenes like these. With one problem merging into another, we can feel helpless and overwhelmed by the scale of it all. Perhaps we can take inspiration from a film made by the great American director Frank Capra. In It's a Wonderful Life, the hero, played by James Stewart, is on the point of committing suicide because he believes he's achieved nothing with his life. But he's saved by a guardian angel who shows him how badly things would have turned out in his small town if he'd never existed. Our environment would be a lot worse off if the international community hadn't started to do something 20 years ago. Countries acting alone cannot deal with global issues like climate change and the extinction of species. Nations have to think globally and harmonize local action to benefit the whole planet. How to do that was the problem which faced policymakers before the Earth Summit. There, they laid the groundwork for an international mechanism which would create a network of partnerships. The aim was to kickstart action at the national level to safeguard the global environment. At Rio, the world's leaders assigned that task to the Global Environment Facility.
People throughout the world, whether they are in a small village, in a big city, in the deserts, or in the forests, aspire for better life, not only for themselves, but for their children as well. Global environmental degradation that has been increasing constantly with the pace of industrialization, particularly the threat of climate change from global warming, the erosion of biological diversity, clearly threatens the achievement of these aspirations, not only in the short, in the long term, but also in the shorter time frame. The GEF is a new mechanism on the world scene that addresses some of these important global environmental issues by creating partnerships among different actors, by inspiring actions on these fronts. However, the GEF is one element by itself, and its actions need to be multiplied and copied many, many times over if we are to achieve a globally secure future, not only for the planet, but for its inhabitants as well.
The GEF's work is funded by developed and developing nations. 5 years on, the benefits are starting to be felt. But the GEF faces a problem. We often expect a quick and painless solution. It's not that simple.
The global environment business is a new business, and it's very complex because the issues are very complex themselves, and it requires multiplicity of actors, all converging towards addressing at the local level these issues that have global environmental ramifications and benefits.
The task is to build viable partnerships for global environmental action between governments, business, the scientific community, and citizens groups. Through these partnerships and by mobilizing funds and transferring technology, the GEF helps bring about change. The GEF is a partnership of the World Bank and the 2 United Nations agencies most directly concerned with economic development and the environment. The priorities for action set for the GEF working through its 3 partners are to save the ozone layer, safeguard international waters, conserve biodiversity, and combat climate change. The GEF has been given a mandate by its 160 member states to address issues not otherwise financed by other means. The World Bank, the UNDP, and the UNEP direct support to local action that will make development compatible with what the environment can sustain. It is the people themselves, working in their communities, who carry out GEF projects. Thailand is one of over 90 countries that have already received GEF funding. Here we see the measure of the challenge. Energy use in the fast-developing economies is critical to whether serious damage from global warming can be avoided. Any hope of combating climate change can be forgotten if the developing world chooses to meet energy demand by building more power stations. In Thailand, demand for electricity will double in 5 years. With GEF funds, the World Bank is supporting an energy conservation drive overseen by EKOTEZ, the Electricity Generating Authority of Thailand. The GEF is investing $15 million, EKOTEZ 12 times that much, for technical innovations such as computer programs that enable big consumers like hotels to cut their demand for electricity, and for the manufacture of solar power units to replace more environmentally damaging fuel, and for raising awareness on the importance of energy conservation. A green label scheme encourages consumers to buy more efficient electric goods. A public information campaign warns of the dire consequences of a wasteful use of energy. school children, the consumers of tomorrow, are taught in green learning centers how electricity is produced and how to conserve it. The GEF-supported project in Thailand is now being studied by its neighbors.
Many countries are visiting Thailand to learn the lessons from this project. In fact, Thailand is setting a very unique example for many countries in the region regarding the strategies we have implemented, various program initiatives, various financing alternatives. And I would say so far it has been very successful, and many countries are interested in learning more about that.
It seems so obvious, meeting energy needs by directly tapping the sun's energy. But most solar power schemes never bore fruit because they didn't create a viable market. This GEF-supported project in Zimbabwe is tackling that by meeting the social as well as the energy needs of the people in the countryside.
Before we had solar power, we have to use paraffin, so paraffin was very expensive. We used batteries to watch TV, to listen to the radio. So when we got solar power, it's easier. We can light the house, we can see the TV.
The project has been very highly successful. To date, we have done over 7,000 systems in schools and clinics and rural homes and hospitals. We have got ZESA, the electricity utility, taking part in it, and 3 NGOs. Such energy does not pollute the environment. Such energy creates employment and uplifts the rural lives, especially in Zimbabwe, where we have had its impact on education, on health, on income generation, and employment creation.
GEF funding for solar home systems has increased the global market by 700%. This is bringing down costs and has motivated more suppliers to enter the market. Renewable technologies and energy conservation not only reduce the emission of greenhouse gases, they also help relieve the pressure on the forests for fuel. The GEF strategy is a global one, but it's working on the ground because the co-financing partners see how they will benefit. Investment in the environment can pay its way. For the GEF to help countries to achieve the goals of the Convention on Biological Diversity, the science has to be as accurate as our patchy knowledge allows. We share the planet with about 14 million other species. Incredibly, less than 1 in 5 are known to science. This is the Global Biodiversity Assessment. The GEF gave $3.3 million to UNEP to enlist 1,500 of the world's scientists in assessing the science underpinning biodiversity. It's provided the scientific basis for the more than 150 projects aimed at safeguarding our inheritance of 4 billion years of evolution. The most optimistic estimate is that species extinction is 50 times greater than would occur naturally. It could be twice as much. If the world continues to lay waste to that diversity, at current rates, extinction could accelerate 100 times by 2020. To deal with this global emergency, the GEF is supporting many of the positive examples of human guardianship of our natural world. Many cultures have contributed to preserving genetic diversity, and there's no better example than this bustling market in Ethiopia. A bewildering variety of grain and seed are traded here, many of which have been displaced elsewhere by industrial agriculture, with its reliance on a handful of high-yielding, chemical-dependent strains. Ethiopia's living seed bank. Over the centuries, farmers have mixed wild and domesticated grains to encourage resistance to disease, pest, and drought. They choose food security over the uncertain promise of bumper yields year in, year out. Even at the height of the famine caused by drought and civil war in the 1980s, parts of the country were producing food surpluses. But even the remotest parts of the country have not been immune from the drive to replace the hardy land races, as the scientists call the original strains, with higher-yielding varieties. In 1994, the UNDP, with GEF funds and in partnership with Ethiopia's Biodiversity Institute, started a project to halt this genetic erosion.
Ethiopia is a very special country in terms